Imagine for a moment a day so pivotal that it reshaped our entire world, a day when the foundations of one of the largest empires in history were solidified. This is the story of that very day. A moment when the phrase, "the sun never sets on the British Empire," began to take a whole new meaning. Welcome to the year 1757, the Battle of Plassey, a turning point where the British East India Company took a decisive step towards becoming an imperial giant. Stick with us, because you're about to embark on a journey into one of the most dramatic single days in world history. To understand why Plassey mattered so much, we need to dive back a little further, into the world of 18th century India. At that time, the powerful Mughal Empire, which had dominated much of the Indian subcontinent for centuries, was crumbling. Regional rulers, or nawabs, were vying for power. India was a mosaic of trade routes, cultural treasures, and immense wealth, a prize sought not just by the British, but by other imperial European powers like the French, the Dutch, and the Portuguese. The stage was chaotic and dangerous, as competing factions jostled for control. At the heart of this drama was the British East India Company, initially formed to facilitate trade, but, by the mid-18th century, transforming into something far more menacing. Enter Robert Clive, a man who might well be described as one of the most ambitious, audacious individuals of the British colonial era. Plucked from among the ranks of the East India Company after proving himself in earlier conflicts against the French, Clive possessed strategic brilliance and a knack for exploiting uncertainty. By 1757, his sights were set on the Bengal region, then ruled by Nawab Siraj-ud-Dowlah. Siraj had good reasons for conflict with the British. He resented their trading privileges and the fortifications they were building without his permission. The tension boiled over into direct confrontation earlier that year during the capture of Fort William in modern-day Kolkata, resulting in the infamous Black Hole of Calcutta incident. It was an episode steeped in tragedy, with dozens of British prisoners allegedly perishing in suffocating captivity. Though the veracity of this event is debated, it sent London into a rage, consolidating British determination to strike back. Clive mobilized an army, a mix of European soldiers and Indian sepoys, a fascinating aspect of colonial militaries that relied on local intermediaries to wage war. With just over 3,000 troops, vastly outnumbered by Siraj's forces of around 50,000, Clive hatched a daring plan. June 23, 1757, dawned humid and heavy with tension. The battlefield near the small village of Plassey was a geography of opportunity. Clive's forces, though smaller, had superior coordination, a modern arsenal and, crucially, political intrigue working in their favor. He had negotiated with Mir Jafar, one of Siraj's commanders, promising him the Nawab's throne in exchange for playing the role of a double agent. This betrayal, as it would turn out, was the linchpin of British success. As the battle unfolded, the skies opened up into a torrential rain, a literal deluge in the midst of cannon fire. The monsoon rains drenched Siraj's army, critically dampening their ammunition and rendering many of their weapons inoperable. But Clive's soldiers had protected their supplies with tarpaulins. Now, imagine the chaos. Drenched soldiers slipping in mud, artillery falling silent, lines of elephant-mounted troops thrown into disarray. Clive seized on the moment, launching a decisive counterattack. The sight of betrayal wreaked havoc among Siraj's ranks as many of his troops, perhaps realizing their leader's weakness, fled the field. Mir Jafar's treachery became painfully clear, and the Nawab's authority crumbled. By nightfall, Siraj-ud-Dowlah's army was shattered. He fled, but was swiftly captured and executed by Mir Jafar's forces. The immediate results of this single battle were tremendous. Mir Jafar was installed as the British puppet Nawab of Bengal, effectively handing over control of one of the richest provinces of India to the East India Company. The aftermath of Plassey filled British coffers with unimaginable wealth, from the spoils of war to tax revenue squeezed from local populations. This windfall didn't just thicken the pockets of British merchants, it financed the growth of Britain's Industrial Revolution and expanded military conquests worldwide. It was Britain's economic stranglehold on Bengal that later made it an industrial and global powerhouse. The victory at Plassey marked a transformation. The British East India Company was no longer merely a trading enterprise. It was now a formidable territorial and military power. However, the battle's consequences weren't just economic. It was the beginning of a long and often brutal era of colonial rule, reshaping India for centuries. The Mughal decline accelerated rapidly after Plassey, as did the subjugation of countless Indian communities. Local artisans were crushed beneath the weight of British monopolies and unfair taxation. Food shortages, famines, and the erosion of traditional economies spread devastation across the population, all as the empire amassed power. It wouldn't be long before Queen Victoria was crowned Empress of India, formalizing what Plassey set into motion. And Plassey didn't just transform India, it shifted the balance of global power. It brought the British into direct rivalry with France in global imperial politics, a struggle that would decisively play out in Europe, the Americas, and beyond. The wealth extracted post-Plassey also gave Britain the means to outpace competitors during the Industrial Revolution. Railways, textiles, ships, the engines of British industry, were fueled in no small part by resources and wealth from India. Without the decisive blow of Plassey underpinning colonial expansion, the British Empire as we know it might never have taken shape. Now, let's fast forward and ponder the modern world. The fact that English is one of India's official languages, the legacy of its rail network, and even the dominance of cricket, all of it traces back in part to the British foothold established that fateful day in 1757. But look beyond that. The systems of globalized trade, multinational corporations, and even modern military alliances can find their ideological precursors in the events of that time. History often unfolds in ripples, and the Battle of Plassey was a tidal wave. It came at a cost, though. The global domination Britain achieved could not have been possible without the exploitation and suffering of millions in its colonies. The divide and rule policies enabled control, but also sowed seeds of division that outlasted the empire itself, leading to conflicts and challenges in the post-colonial era. Understanding Plassey isn't just about marveling at British ingenuity and audacity. It's about understanding the price paid by those on the other side. Behind every triumphant banner is a shadow, and the story of the British Empire is no exception. As we reach the end of this episode, let us leave you with this thought. History is rife with turning points that pave ways for empires to rise. But empires, no matter how mighty they seem, are ultimately defined as much by their decline as their victories. The Battle of Plassey wasn't just a win for Britain. It was the sowing of seeds that would shape and scar centuries to come. What do you think might have happened if Siraj-ud-Dawla had prevailed instead? How might history have looked different, not just for India, but for the entire world? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story gripped you as much as it does us, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most pivotal moments. This, my friends, is history, and its echoes are still with us today.